actor made...
Stop the show.
Who? I said who was it?
That would be me. Why, Daffy?
I said hand it over. Just put it back on, please. The Stage Door Show. Celebrating the independent artist. With your host, Dave Hondel.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stage Door Show tonight. This is Dave Hondel. Very excited tonight. I just met this guy a couple weeks ago. Great guy, Gary Miceli. He's an actor, voice actor, does some great voices. And by the way, he's the voice of our new season 2 intro. So welcome to the show, Gary Miceli. How you doing, Gary?
Thank you so much for having me, Dave.
Absolutely. Just so great to have you on. I know we both have a mutual friend in Mike Bova, who's a comedian, national touring comedian. And I know you're in the New York area as well, right?
Yeah. I've known Mike Bova for probably 10, 11 years now. Wonderful man. Yeah,
for sure. Well, I know that, when you reached out to me and you had some of your voices, you're a great voice actor. Some of the cartoon characters from when I was growing up, actually, it just brought back some great memories, and it really got me interested in some of your work. So when did you start doing voice acting? And then, when did that love come?
Okay, so I think my love of mimicry was always there. I remember really young. I grew up in the 90s, so I would imitate the NSYNC dance moves.
Oh, okay.
and even then, to me, like looking back, that was mimicry, right? That was me imitating them. And then I believe my first impression was the Grinch, like I hate those shoes, for like Jim Carrey's Grinch.
Sure.
And then I didn't become aware of kind of what I was doing until I was 14. Then when I was 14, I got, my own computer, and I would look up Frank Caliendo and Rob Magnotti and all these impressionists, and I just was like, where has this been all my life? I feel like I've been doing this for my whole life, and then I just kept on going with it and kept on being interested. And now, because I had a computer, I was able to look up so much that I didn't before.
Right. Like some of the, Mel Blanc, of course, he's one of the most famous voice actors of our time. And, I know that back in the day, he did a majority of the cartoon voices, and a lot of the cartoons that I watched was Mel Blanc. And, being like one person doing so many different voices like you do, how do you kind of jump from one to the next and be able to keep the integrity of the character, but jumping into conversations with multiple characters? How do you in your head, how do you do that?
Well, for me, character is first. What I loved about Mel Blanc is he was an actor first, and then he was a voice actor. He was an amazing actor. When he would do Bugs Bunny, if you saw him, he would morph and look like Bugs Bunny, right? If he did Porky Pig, he would, he looked like these characters. And to me, character is number one. I don't focus on the voice necessarily. I make sure I understand the character, know the character, kind of see where he's going, what his personality is before I even attempt the voice. To me, the voice is secondary. Personality is number one. You have to get the character right. So for me, I'm working on some Woody Woodpecker stuff right now, and I didn't even want to attempt the voice before I, watched it and learned about who this woodpecker was.
Well, they all have a personality, right? I mean,
exactly.
But people have to realize, just like a person, if you mimic, let's say, Mike or Matthew McConaughey, he has a certain demeanor, and the voice is one thing, but like you said, they have a personality too. If you don't get the personality right, the voice doesn't matter, right?
Right. Yeah, that's the whole thing with me, is the personality is number one. I've written things for Looney Tunes, on my computer that I go back and edit and redo it, and I say, Daffy wouldn't say that, Porky wouldn't say that, he wouldn't do that. And then sometimes on the microphone, I'll stutter as Porky, and I'll say, wait, I don't think he would do that. Let me do it again. To me, the integrity of all these characters is really, really important. I grew up with Looney Tunes. I grew up with Space Jam. I learned about Mel Blanc when I finally got a computer. Then I learned about, Dawes Butler. And Dawes Butler was every voice that Mel Blanc wasn't.
Yeah.
And then, June Foray, the voice of Rocky the Flying Squirrel, was, 97, 98, and she was still working.
Yeah.
I mean, these people are some of the greatest actors. And like you said, Mel Blanc literally did all the voices, everyone.
So, Gary, so when you're doing these voices that you're listening, as I know sometimes, obviously, these actors eventually sometimes, if they pass away or, they have to replace them with somebody. And are you able to listen and hear the difference between, the original and the new person that comes in? Because sometimes, there might be a slight difference, but I'm guessing that it's important to try to keep that integrity of that voice, even if somebody does pass away, right? I mean, it's important.
Right. Right. Like you said, Mel Blanc didn't live forever. He died in, I believe, 89. So after he died, Jeff Bergman took over for Bugs and a few other characters, and Bob Bergen was Porky Pig, and Bob Bergen is still is Porky Pig. He's been doing it for 30 years. And with each director, they kind of changed actors. I know Joe Lasky was one of my favorites. He passed away not too long ago. Joe Lasky did Bugs and Daffy for Looney Tunes Back in Action with Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
So they have a few different actors that can come in and do the voice. They have a few that do Porky Pig. They have a few that do Bugs Bunny. It really just depends what the director wants at that point. If they want to do something fresh, they could bring in someone new. They have someone right now, Eric Bauza, who does literally all of them. Marvin, he's been doing Marvin for a while. He does Bugs, Daffy, Porky. He does all of them.
What's your goal? I mean, what do you want? I mean, what is your goal to do that on like the Looney Tunes or whatever they do now? I mean, is that your goal to be that voice for either that character or several characters? I mean, is that where you want to be?
So I love cartoons. I think as adults, we appreciate cartoons more because like you watch the Jetsons and you understand just how much it took for them to do each individual frame by hand.
Right.
And the amazing performances of the actors, just you appreciate it so much more. I love all cartoons. I think all cartoons are great. Is it my goal to be the new voice of the Looney Tunes? I would like that. I wouldn't say no. I would love that. I mean, who wouldn't turn down such an honor and carry the torch that, Mel Blanc lit the way for all of us? That would be such an honor. But even me just doing, Looney Tunes stuff for different podcasts and radio station is a dream come true. So is my goal. My goal is to keep learning, to keep exploring, and to keep expanding, and to keep learning new things, and to keep exploring what I can do.
Yeah, I mean, and just the fact that you're able to do those voices. I mean, I just have a great respect for people who can change their voice like that. And I have a tough time doing this podcast in my own voice without drinking a ton of water and and throat lozenges and things like that. So I can imagine what it's like to do that voice.
And what's crazy about some of those voices is sometimes when people say to me, "Are you done practicing the voice?" I'm never done practicing a voice because it's always a like an actor and a podcaster. You're always trying to get better, right?
Right. What's your favorite voice to do?
Oh, my favorite is the pig. Porky. He's definitely my favorite.
How do you learn how to do the stutter piece of it? How do you learn? Because I'm sure there's a trick to it, and I'm sure this got to kind of sound the same almost every time.
All right. So I'm going to teach you. All right. Okay. To do Porky is very specific, and for those who don't know, Porky was originally done by someone who had a real stutter.
Mm-hmm.
But they wasted so much film in trying to get his lines. They hired Mel Blanc and said, "Look, Mel, we need you to do this, but we need you to control the stutter."
Yeah.
The film was so expensive and they were wasting so much film. So he took this character and made him, gave him so much more life and gave him personality. But, okay, Porky. So there's 4 syllables and then the word. So there's ba, be, boy. So it becomes boy, phone, water. And he doesn't stutter on consonants. He doesn't stutter on vowels.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very specific way he stutters. So you can go And then the thing is putting full sentences together.
Yeah.
I lost my at this thing.
That's great. And then you also do Daffy Duck, right?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I try to learn as many. Well, not as many. I try to see what I can do in terms of, because, like I said, I was inspired by Mel Blanc. I was inspired by Joe Lasky, and I loved all these voices I grew up with. So I said, it would only be natural for me to learn one and then try to see if I can do the others.
Sure. What about, well, because what I heard is somebody that does voices, when I heard an interview, and I can't remember who it was, but it's just, sometimes it's just a matter of, if somebody said, if you think about it, if you listen to what I do, because I just go up an octave for this other character, but it's really the same voice as this character. So it's really not a big change. It might just be the accent, or it just might be, a different inflection, but it's really the same voice. I mean, do you find that to be true?
Yeah, James Arnold Taylor, if you look him up, he does a great demonstration of that, where he starts off in his regular voice, he adds some things, and then it sounds like someone else. Then he adds something else, and it sounds someone else.
Right.
For example, when I do Woody Woodpecker, it's almost exactly like my voice, but it's more high energy. But the thing is, with my voice and Woody Woodpecker, my Woody Woodpecker is I change the pitch.
Okay.
In an Audacity, in a software.
Sure.
Because that's how they did it in the cartoons.
Oh, okay.
That's
so
how they
so
did
it was electronically changed.
Yeah.
Pitch. Okay.
Yeah, and some of those voices were. I think Porky was sped up as well.
Yeah.
And then during the later years of Mel Blanc's life, they sped up some of his voices.
Yeah.
Tweety Bird is still sped up.
Yeah.
So some of the voices are sped up. The only voice that's sped up with mine is Woody Woodpecker. Everything else is I just do.
Yeah. I interviewed Chris Kirkpatrick years ago. I don't know if you heard the podcast, but he was Chip Skylark in the Fairly Odd Parents.
Yep.
And he said it was one of his, out of everything he's done, it was one of his favorite jobs he ever did, because he loves cartoons. And the fact that he was asked to do that was a real honor. So, I mean, voices, I think more people like cartoons than they, than we might know about or they want to admit. I'm a huge fan of cartoons. I love it as well. But, the newer cartoons, I shouldn't say newer, but, SpongeBob is, a little bit after like Looney Tunes and all that. And, Cartoon Network, I mean, they continue to put out different, animated. Yeah, so the chance to do voice work is really, I mean, greater now than it was ever has been. Do you find that to be true? And also some of the cartoons, it might not be, happy or, whatever. It might be a dark character. Maybe. Is that something that interests you as well, to do something like that?
For sure. Yeah. As an actor, you want to expand your range and try to do everything. I'm not just limited to classic characters, although I do enjoy classic characters. Sure. I enjoy doing original stuff as well. Mm-hmm. I just did for a movie, Last House of Horror. I did a guy on the phone. My friend Manny was like, I need someone on the phone. I need a quick voiceover. Here's the description of the character. Here's what he's going to do. What do you think? I said, sure.
Yeah.
And it was and it was a guy that lost his wallet, and it was really like just a quick thing, but it was so much fun to do something original. Right. Like you said, 50 years ago, we had 3 channels.
Right, exactly.
Now you have channels that are all day cartoons.
Right. Hundreds of channels. Right, exactly.
Yeah. And Looney Tunes is still going. Looney Tunes will never get done.
Sure.
The Jetsons just put out a movie.
And I think I want to say Scooby-Doo continues to put out new material as well, right?
Yeah, Scooby-Doo is always putting out new stuff.
Yeah. And and just back in the day too, it wasn't just cartoons, but sometimes it might be somebody in a costume, but you're doing the voice of that costume, character. And people also think don't realize that like in Star Wars and a lot of these movies that they grew up with, I mean, there had to be voices for Darth Vader, and that was, of course, James Earl Jones. But those are iconic, voices that you'll never forget. It's amazing what voice acting will allow you to do.
Yeah, and it's everywhere. People don't think of it, but if you think about the toys, if you go to a theme park, if you walk somewhere and you hear that voice saying, "The right is on your left," it's all voice work. I mean,
right.
even like, I don't know if you know this, but the movie Toy Story.
Oh, of course.
So they have all those video games and dolls. That's not Tom Hanks. That's his brother Jim.
His brother Jim. Yeah.
Yeah, his brother Jim does all that work.
Exactly.
Yeah, and he sounds just like his brother.
You'd be doing yourself a disservice if you didn't do voice work. And if you watch TV, almost every commercial, you can almost identify what famous actor is doing the voiceover for that car commercial or whatever the commercial is. I mean, I like to listen to see who that actor is, and I kind of test my wife sometimes when we're watching a commercial, and I say, you know who that is? And she says, who? I said, Matthew McConaughey. She's like, no. And then I'll Google it, and sure enough, it was him. I like listening to try to figure out who that voice is.
Yeah, you hear that signature. All right. Yeah,
exactly. And sometimes they try to change it a little bit too, deep in their voice or whatever, but you still know who it is.
Yeah.
So the other thing is commercials. I mean, is this something that what kind of work do you do for? Did you ever do commercial work? Like commercials?
And Mike Bova got me my first job.
Oh wow!
So shout out to Mike Bova again. Yeah, I did a pizza commercial for him. Back in over there.
Yeah, right.
Commercial work, whatever somebody needs, I'm the guy. Commercials, animation. I could play the very wacky zany, but I can also play the very real and very intimate.
Right. Let's hear some of the voices that you like to do.
Well, I just did my favorite. One of my favorites which is the guy who you know and love. He says, if you don't listen to Dave's podcast, he's going to stab you with a salad fork.
All right, Christopher Walken. I will stab people with salad forks if you don't listen. So make sure you listen to every show. What other voices do you like to do?
Oh, there's so many. But the thing that I love to learn to do is to learn to do voices that people normally don't do. Because everyone does a Walken, everyone does a Matthew McConaughey, right. But I don't. I searched Looney Tunes impressions and Roger Rabbit and all these different other cartoons, and I don't think anyone's doing them as much anymore.
Right, that's true. I mean, one of the things that's sad. I find it sad anyway that some of the things that we grew up watching, whether it's a TV show or cartoon or whatever. Some of the younger people out there, younger crowd, you'll mention a certain character name or a cartoon name, and they're looking at you like you got three heads. And I'm like, it seems like that the history of those types of programs that we grew up on when we did have just three networks. I think people now are spoiled with almost an overwhelming
7 million channels.
Yeah, and so it's almost like overstimulation, where there's almost too many that like we'll interview an actor on a channel that's been out there for a while, but again, it's like it's not on CBS or it's not on NBC or it's not on ABC, but it's on but unless they have a cult following or some kind of niche group that watches it, they might not know who that person is. But on the other hand, if you're an actor, you have plenty of different outlets to get work. And, one of the things that I talked to somebody about the other day is about commercial work. Because if you do, for our listeners out there, our indie artists, if you do a national commercial, which I think by scale ratings, it's if it's in 3 or more markets in the United States, it's considered a national commercial. So I auditioned for a tri-state Ford commercial with Derek Jeter, and it was in Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. And it was a catcher. It was the commercial a couple of years ago where he was rounding third base, and there was a catcher at home, and it was a Ford commercial. I can't remember the whole gist of it, but it was between me and this other catcher, and the other catcher got it. Congrats to him, but he made just in that one commercial. So listen up, everyone, $35,000 for that one commercial. And that was just like a regional. but it was considered national because it was 3 different markets. So he banked. I mean, he made $35,000 for one commercial because he made scale every time it aired. So just keep that in mind. People that want to do commercials, or commercials is where you really should start.
Yeah.
Because you can really bank, and then once you have that money saved, then go audition for the movies and the TV shows, because you're going to be working less frequently than you do on commercials.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just a little bit of advice. Well, what kind of advice can you give our listeners from your years of doing voice work and being in that kind of business?
I think my one piece of advice is you have to love it. I mean, you really have to love it. And you have to learn to listen to yourself and to be critical of yourself, and to go back in the booth and say, even though I feel like I'm done for the day, I'm going to go redo that. You always have to get better and get better. And you have to study acting. You have to study acting. I mean, I've been studying acting for 15 plus years, and I'm still studying it.
Yeah.
In order to be a great voice actor, you have to be a great actor. I mean, if you look at the greatest voice actors of all time, like we said, June Foray, Dallas Butler, they were great actors.
Yeah.
They were great, great performers.
Right.
And they performed these characters. And that's all she wrote. Just learn to be a great, great actor, and take improv too. Improv can really help you.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when I'm behind the microphone, I'll look at my script and I'll go, you know what, I'm gonna say something else, and I'm gonna say something else.
Change it up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it just sounds so much better.
Yeah. When you're doing a voice, and you have to be a good actor. I mean, do you ever go behind the microphone? And I don't think people realize this. They're not just talking behind the microphone. They're acting. So, I mean, do you get into the character with facial expressions and throwing
Absolutely.
your hands up in the air, and
Absolutely.
I mean, doing things like that, because I think it comes across on the microphone doing that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I learned a long time ago, if you physically play the character, the voice will follow. Like I said, I really try to hone in on and learn these people's personalities. Like for Daffy Duck, I really try to figure out what he's doing, what he's saying, his personality, the way he presents himself as a character, just how he is. And I try to emulate that as best as I can. Like, I'm throwing my arms around. I'm saying, "Hey, Bugs, come here!" Like, I'm trying to really emulate that behind the microphone. And I don't care if they see. I don't care if the other person sees it. Right. I'm doing it because it helps me get into the character.
Right, for sure. Yeah.
And these aren't just voices to me. A voice just seems like a sound effect.
Right,
how many people can say? Yeah, how many people can that you can call up and go, what's up, Doc? But how many people can actually take a script and do it like that character would, and add the inflections of the character?
Right. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I think, if anybody out there is interested in doing voice work, I invite them to go onto YouTube and pull up behind the scenes, voice work for whatever, character you want to look at, Mel Blanc, or, I think there's some videos of him doing it, but even though it's older, but some of the other characters like SpongeBob and so forth. I mean, there's behind the scenes, and Disney characters as well, that you can watch, and you'll see that every single one of them are acting out their character. They're not just talking, they're acting it out. And sometimes even in multiple people in the room, kind of working off each other, sometimes that happens as well. Not all the time. A lot of times it's edited in, but sometimes you'll get even, a group of people that are voice acting in the same room at the same time, because the director might want that kind of dynamic, where it's like they're playing off each other immediately, as opposed to somebody in the editing booth, editing it all together like a conversation. So, I mean, there's different ways that can happen, but like I said, for our audience out there, there's some voice actors out there, people that want to do as a career. So it's important to understand that it is acting. It truly is acting. And a voice actor is just as important as an actor on a stage or an actor in front of the lens. These voice actors are, again, very important to any project. And, the fact is they make a lot of money, and they sometimes they do it as a side job, and they can make more money than they do in front of the lens.
Yeah. And that's, the money aspect is great, but just trying to put out good content for people to watch. And, for me, it's all about, if I do a classic character, if I do something, if like you said at the beginning, I did a voice and you had that rush of nostalgia, that's what it's all about for me. That's it.
Yeah.
It's true, Doc.
Well, before we go, Gary, I ask this of everybody, but what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people to think about when they think of Gary Miceli?
Oh my God. What a question. I think that's the best question I've ever gotten in my entire life. Oh my God. What do I want my legacy to be? I like to do a lot. I like to do a lot of different things, even if it's free work. I like to just get what's inside of me out there. Even as a creative, you want to get all the creative stuff in you out there. You want to. Some people paint, some people act and paint, some people do all these different things. I like to explore my creativity. I would like to be my legacy to be someone who was constantly creating and constantly learning and to keep on pushing.
Well, that's a great legacy. And, thank you so much, Gary, for being with us tonight. And again, just great to meet you. And again, everybody that's listening to our show, season 2, he's the voice of our intro and just one of the most talented voice actors I've run into yet, Gary Miceli. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks. I'll say thanks, Gabe. That's all, folks.